Good morning. China has declared its ambitions to be the world's premier manufacturer of passenger jets by 2035. That's 10 years from now, at which time China plans to grab most of the global market share for planes and parts from Airbus and Boeing. This is a solid report here. It's written by an analyst group in the European Union, and they go through China is hoping to do just that. The report was written in 2022, so only 2 years ago, and it's already dated, as we'll see. And their final conclusions are off. They're wrong. I am impressed by how durable is the point of view where industry insiders acknowledge China's successes in every other industry and in all the key supply chains, but they believe that in one particular industry, their industry, that's where China just has too many hurdles to overcome. And that's the mistake they make here. They document how China went from zero, basically, 20 years ago in railroad, high-speed rail, passenger cars, trucks, and shipbuilding to global domination. But they also believe that in commercial aerospace, China cannot do what they've done everywhere else. And in doing so, they make the most common mistake, the most fundamental common mistake of all, which is that they forget that China owns the supply chains. The authors here are brilliant guys, and they point out that China for now cannot build planes without the technology and the know-how that Airbus and Boeing share with them. But Airbus and Boeing can't build planes without the raw materials and the high-grade copper and the electronics and a lot of other things that China's got. China believes it's going to be easier for China to learn how to build planes than it will be for Boeing and Airbus to learn how to build copper mines or an electronics industry for their avionics systems, or for the United States and Europe to build out rare earths mines, the refineries for them, and then the magnets that Boeing and Airbus need for their navigation systems to work. If the US government or the EU government says that Boeing and Airbus are not allowed to work with China anymore to help them build planes, China can simply say they're not going to help Boeing and Airbus build their planes either. In transportation technology, aerospace is the last one that China has not taken over yet. On this chart, the dark red line is the sum total of the other three components. Rail is in orange yellow, shipbuilding is in light blue, aircraft is dark blue. For rail and ships, China's exports far exceed their imports. But for aircraft, it's still negative. Aircraft is below the zero line, which means that imports exceed exports, but it's closing fast. And if present trends continue, China will be a net exporter of aircraft technology in a few years, and perhaps already are. The data go through 2022. This is how China stacks up against the European Union. High-speed rail is 2 times or so. Shipbuilding, EU is at 6, China's at about 48, so that's 8x. For cars, China already passed the EU in 2022. Since then, it's now way ahead of Japan. And Europe is trying to ban Chinese cars to hold off whatever markets they've got left. But the passenger jets here, it's EU, is China versus Airbus. China's government believes not only in moving up value chains, which means manufacturing higher value-added products. It's to have full control over them. That means all the raw materials, all the refining, all the intermediate products needed to make them. They also leverage universities to do research. The C919 is China's passenger jet that they hope will compete against Boeing's 787 and the Airbus 320. COMAG is the Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China. And COMAG has set up 36 universities and have tight partnerships in 10 of them. Inside these universities, they're building labs and engineering centers, sharing the research and training engineers who will graduate today and start working for COMAG tomorrow. As an aside, every single one of those kids in every single one of those universities speaks English and can read technical manuals written in English better than I can. On 26 April came news that Sapara Airlines will be replacing all of their Boeing planes with new C919s. First delivery will be later this year, and they'll be buying 30 or so over the next 3 years. This is the first private airline in China to be buying Chinese-built jets. Previously, the buyers were state-owned companies here. This is the playbook that China used to take over the high-speed rail industry. It's the playbook they used to take over cars and ships and semiconductors and household appliances. And in blue, we see where China is now. They are now in the independent innovation phase, high-speed rail. They don't need anyone else to build new improvements in HSR. That started in 2008. Naturally, now they are just taking over the global markets for high-speed rail. The bottom part of this table is in red, and here we have the C919 jet. They are still accumulating technology, but need some help learning how to assemble everything. COMAG is working with foreign companies here in China, and especially with Airbus, starting in 2030, likely before. The C919 will be in its independent innovation phase. Starting about now, foreign OEMs, foreign original equipment manufacturers, are starting to be excluded from the Chinese market because Chinese companies are already building that tech. And international expansion, the bottom box, right-hand side, they expect to happen sometime after 2030. Well, they're already ahead of schedule. This headline is from February, test flights in East Asia. The ARJ-21 is a regional jet, a smaller jet, and it's already in service internationally. In November, we learned that an airline in Brunei is buying 15 C919s, and an Indonesian airline is probably going to buy some. So going back again to this chart, the analysts forecasted that international expansion for the C919s will start around 2032, but it's already happening. We see this a lot. Brilliant reports written by clearly very smart people who figure out almost everything. They know what China hopes to do. They know how China will do it. And then they set a date that's far off into the future when Chinese companies are going to start to be a serious problem for companies in the United States or in Europe who are in that business. If you're Airbus or Boeing, you should be worried about your global sales starting about 2035. And they're off by a full decade in this case. And we find it again and again and again. If we pull the forecasts and the reports from high-speed rail analysts or shipbuilding analysts or automobile industry analysts or semiconductors or electronics or magnets or rockets, they make the same mistake every time, every industry. The analysts do realize correctly that the Chinese want to take over this industry, and they might do it in 20 years. But the correct answer is always closer to 3 years. 36 universities. That's about 400,000 kids right there, right now, working on how to build a better C919 passenger jet. Just as important, millions of Chinese here and around the world with an iron grip on the supply chains for all the stuff that we need to build airplanes. Be good.
Give us good teachers. Give us strong ministers.